just in front of them. The battle is heating up. That's the number 2 machine going after the 17 machine of, who is that? That's Rusty Mitchell, the Team E-car.
Yep, so Rusty Mitchell trying to hold off Gustavo Jacobin, but here comes Jacobin on the outside, Mark.
He makes the pass at the exit of turn number 2, but Ostella says not so fast. He comes climbing back into the fray to the bottom side of turn number 3. Now Ostella lifts a little bit. That allows Jacobin to clear him. And now the lead has already grown to a straightaway for Joseph Newgarden, and he is being trailed by his teammate Esteban Guerrieri.
Yeah, by the way, Brandon Wagner in the 22 car for Team Moore Racing this weekend. Mark, it's been a little bit of a musical chair situation there since Victor Garcia stepped out of the 22 car. Last weekend we saw Michael Grenier in that car. Now Brandon Wagner is Wagner right now runs 9th.
77 machine of Clausen continues to be fast. He hopes his latest victim is David Ostella. He tiptoes a little bit through turns 3 and 4, catches up to him at the start-finish line. The car, even though he spun off of the high side of the exit of 2, Mike, appears to be working much more comfortably to the high side. If he can get that done and stay in the throttle, he's going to continue to pick off cars left and right.
Yeah, the only problem is he's a lap and a half behind the race leader, Joseph Newgarden, as he spins off the course on the second turn at the start. And Brian Clausen, Mark, I agree with you. I think he's got himself a pretty good race car, and I think he's going to bemoan the fact that he was a little impatient at the start of this one.
Jacobin looks fast as they set up for turn number 2 in the Crepes and Waffles machine. He's to the bottom side of Duarte Ferreira. That's the battle for 5th now as it reaches turn number 3. Duarte leaves the bottom of the racetrack open, and it looked like Jacobin lifted just a little bit. Now they'll go side by side to the apex of turn number 4. Little bit of a push in the 28 machine of Duarte Ferreira. It washed up the racetrack, which left the door open for Gustavo Jacobin to grab that spot. So Jacobin now improves the position. He has moved up into the top 5. Best battle on the racetrack right now in the red cars. Anders Krohn in the number 9 machine and the number 4 machine of Jorge Goncalves as Stephen Wilson makes his way onto pit road. Mike, some funding issues for the number 5 machine this weekend. We expect for this to be it for Stephen Wilson this weekend.
So Stephen Wilson will bring the 5 car to pit lane, and it does appear he could be done for the weekend. So Wilson is out. We do hear, though, that car will be ready to compete once again for points at Baltimore. And for the final races of this season, Stephen Wilson, of course, will be back. Meantime, the guys out in front, Joseph Newgarden, Mark, leads Esteban Guerrieri by just over a second. Last time by, Joseph Newgarden at 143.429 miles an hour.
Jacobin continues to show the fast way around the racetrack. Gustavo not in a mood to talk yesterday after qualifying. He had a horrible qualifying effort yesterday.
Well, he's on the move now.
And he is really coming now. He's starting to set up the machine of Jorge Goncalves into turn number 3. Got out of sorts a little bit, got it in a little too deep and had to lift, which cost him some momentum. But once he picks off Jorge Goncalves, he'll have the number 9 machine of Anders Krohn just in front of him. So now he's trying to get back up to full song. Meanwhile, the advantage continues to grow for Joseph Newgarden. He was towing his teammate Esteban Guerrieri around this 1-mile course. They're getting ready to complete 15 of the 100 scheduled laps.
Well, this has to be frustrating for Gustavo Jacobin as he continues to battle the red cars in front of him. Goncalves and then the 9 car of Anders Krohn is he's going to look to the low side of Goncalves, trying to set him up into turn number 1. Not going to be able to get it done this time, but Mark, as he battles, he watches Newgarden and Esteban Guerrieri just pull away as now they're a half a track in front of Jacobin as he runs 5th.
Well, Goncalves is not giving him much room. Clearly, he is the faster car, and Jorge is not making it easy for him to get to the bottom of the racetrack. So Gustavo says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll set you up. I'll try to go high. And what does Goncalves do? He moves up in front of him and tries to cut him off. Jacobin cannot be happy about the way Jorge Goncalves is running such an erratic line, not to mention the fact Goncalves has his teammate running just in front of him.
Well, he should get him right here as he drops to the low side, Mark. Will he have enough to make the pass? No, he's not going to be able to get him again in 3.
Yep, Goncalves being told to hold his line, and he is not doing that. And if Tony Kottman does what he has done in the past, wouldn't be at all surprised to see the black flag perhaps displayed for the number 4 machine of Jorge Goncalves, because Gustavo Jacobin, you can bet, the folks in the T Moore stable are in the ear of race officials right now at the line that Jorge Goncalves is running on Gustavo Jacobin as this battle for fourth continues in turn number 4.
Here he comes to the outside, Gustavo Jacobin. He's tried the inside the last 3 laps as he has entered turn 1 and turn 3, trying to get the nose underneath him.
And as we reach the halfway point, the battle for the lead has heated up. And would you believe their teammate, the number 77 machine of Brian Clausen, is figuring prominently into this battle.
Yeah.
Had some issues about 5 laps ago with the Belardi cars. They did their best to stay out of harm's way, but it was just a traffic deal, a racing deal, if you will. Gary Arias pulled up on Joseph Newgarden a couple of times, Mike. Can't make the pass stick just yet. And just in front of them runs Brian Clausen.
Brian Clausen about to see himself go 2 laps down here to the leaders after spinning out on the opening lap in turn number 2. Here comes Newgarden, Mark, about 4 car lengths separating him from the lap car of Clausen.
It'll be interesting to see if any orders have been issued with Clausen to let him go. However, Clausen himself does not want to go another lap down just in case there might be a caution. But Clausen just about lost it off of turn number 4 there.
He swung out very high in turn number 4. It's going to give Newgarden room to get underneath. And now he's got Brandon Wagner he's going to have to work on.
And he lifts just a little bit, and Gary Airy starts to catch him. Gary Airy gets a nice run off of Clausen, a nice draft down the back straightaway. He's going to slingshot by him going into turn number 3 as we reach the halfway point. And Brandon Wagner now is going to lift a little bit. Let's see which side Gary Airy chooses here. He'll tuck right in behind him, so that's going to give Newgarden some breathing room to start to pull away a little bit. Newgarden setting up for turn 1. Gary Airy slides to the bottom side of the number 22 machine and makes the pass.
Yeah, so now the top 2 cars chasing each other, and Joseph Newgarden about 20 car lengths, so Mark, in front of Gary Airy as the gap is now 9/10 of a second.
Battle for 4th, 5th, and 6th is a pretty good one. That's the teammates of Anders Krohn and Jorge Goncalves, then Duarte Ferreira. Then about 12 car lengths behind them is the number 16 machine of David Ostella, who's running in the 7th position. That battle looks like it could heat up just a little bit. Carbone now can start to see in his rearview mirrors the car of his teammate. That's the number 11 machine of Joseph Newgarden. Newgarden gets off the corner a little quicker than the number 7 machine of Gary Airy. Victor stays to the high side, gives his teammate plenty of room to make the pass on the bottom out of turn number 3, or turn number 2.
Yep, so Joseph Newgarden will once again use a lap car to put a lot of distance between himself and second place Esteban Gary Airy. Gary Airy will move to the low side. He will also clear Carbone. So once again, the leaders running 1-2 with plenty of clean track in front of them.
And Gustavo Jacobin is running in the 3rd position, Mike, and he is just about the difference in the corners now, just ahead of the leader. So Joseph Newgarden has an opportunity to put the field a lap down through 3rd place.
Yeah, less than a straightaway separating these 2 race cars as, Mark, you can almost see visually Newgarden gaining on Gustavo Jacobin as now Jacobin has just cleared start-finish, and there is Newgarden as Newgarden trying to chase him down in 1.
Anders Krohn runs in 4th, then Goncalves, then Ferreira, Ostella, Mitchell, Carbone, and Clausen. Brandon Wagner is shown 11th, and Stephen Wilson has been towed behind the wall after completing just a handful of laps as we're 55 laps in. Don't forget, coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern, it's the Izod IndyCar race, and Mike initially set the green flag a little closer to 4 o'clock. That has now been moved up by Izod IndyCar Series officials.
Yeah, there is a threat of rain later this afternoon, Mark, and certainly being able to gain an extra 30 minutes on the possible approaching weather, I think, would be very big. Izod IndyCar Series officials and Jerry Gappens, the general manager here at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, they want to do everything they can to get in all 225 laps. I think it's a smart move, Mark, to move up the start of the race by nearly a half hour.
Yeah, no question. And while certainly the impending weather or the threat of inclement weather is certainly going to have somewhat of an impact on those that might decide to come here at the last minute. Mike, we're reaching into our memory banks a bit and going back to the first couple of years that the series ran here, and we can already see a noticeable difference that Bruton Smith and Jerry Gappens and their promotional abilities have put a pretty nice stamp on this facility and this area, and it looks like that they have rolled out the welcome mat and people have taken the invitation.
Well, let's remember it's been 13 years since Indy cars have run at this track, and Mark, you and I were both here for that race, and we know there were not a lot of fans here at that time, and here we are 13 years later. And Mark, I can say just a pretty good estimate. I would say right now we probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 12,000 watching this Firestone Indy Lights event. And of course, with the Eyes Hot IndyCar Series race set to start in a couple of hours, I think Jerry Gappens just might reach his goal. He told me Friday afternoon that they were hoping, if the weather cooperates with them, for between 35 and 40,000. I think that would be an outstanding crowd here today if he sees that happen.
Well, when we were here before, not only was the parking lot up above the backstretch on the hill, it didn't have any cars in it when we were here before, but I can't get over the sea of campers and RVs that we have back out off in the distance over toward the turn 2 area.
Well, the fans here in New England have responded. Jerry Gappens is an Indiana guy, was born and raised in Windfall, Indiana, and in fact, it was Jerry Gappens who gave me my first opportunity to call races at the Terre Haute Action Track when he and his dad were the promoters there in 1987 and 1988, and I thank Jerry every day for that opportunity, because it was that opportunity that allowed me to make the move to be where I am today. But Jerry's an Indiana guy who loves open-wheel racing, and Jerry thinks that this track is a perfect place for a great IndyCar event. And certainly if he can deliver a crowd, Mark, I think you're going to see the Indy cars not only coming back here, but building on the crowd year to year, because the product now, no doubt about it, from the top of the board to the bottom, it's a better product than it was years ago, that's for sure.
So while you thank him for opening the door,
yes,
the rest of us can blame him for opening
that is correct. That is correct. One man's gratitude is another man's regret.
Gustavo Jacobin has now been put a lap down by the leader, Joseph Newgarden. He made the pass into turn number 1, and to Gustavo's credit, he raced like a sportsman, because he did not make it difficult for Newgarden at all. He drove to the high side, he maintained his line, and he let Joseph Newgarden make the pass. Been a bit more difficult for the number 7 Lucas Oil Machine of Sam Schmidt Motorsports, Esteban Guerrieri, to get his way around Jacobin. He's not been able to get a good run on Gustavo yet as they come down the main straightaway, Mike.
No, he hasn't, Mark, and there's still some 7-8 car lengths separating Gustavo Jacobin and Esteban Guerrieri. Meantime, Joseph Newgarden, Mark, he's got a car that's on rails, and he begins to put a lot of distance between himself and those other 2 cars of Jacobin and Guerrieri.
Joseph Newgarden had led 212 laps coming into this race today. In 10 races, he has 4 wins, 2 poles, 7 top 5s. Mike, in 10 starts, 9 top 10s. He's led half of the races that he's competed in. And again, just 1 DNF at Long Beach, and he's led 212 laps.
Yeah, and let's not forget that race at Long Beach, that was his race.
Right.
You know, so that should be another W in the column for him. He should have 5. He knows that. And Mark, at the time when we talked to him about it, he said, you know, it will go down as a great life lesson for me as far as being a race car driver, and to be able to come away from an event like that with that sort of lesson, but then still be able to regain the confidence that you need, and to be able to continue doing what you need to do to build on that championship lead and perhaps win the title. That's best case scenario for a young driver.
Well, Esteban Guerrieri has still not been able to work his way around the crepes and waffles machine of Gustavo Jacobin. They're going into turn 1 nose to tail, actually about a 3-car length differential between the 2. Now, bigger issue, Joseph Newgarden, the leader, is coming up on a lot of lap traffic, Mike. There's the machine of Brandon Wagner there. Yep. There's it leading that freight train. Then there's Duarte Ferreira, David Ostella, and Anders Krohn. And Joseph Newgarden is within a half a straightaway of all of those cars, Mike, and there's still 30 laps to go. So he's going to have to deal with that traffic eventually.
Yeah, and, you know, the problem is, too, these guys are fighting with each other in front of them. You know,
right.
It's not as though, I mean, for example, we're watching Anders Krohn try to get underneath Ostella right now, and this battle taking place just 10 car lengths in front of Joseph Newgarden. So, Mark, he's going to have to tiptoe through these lap cars for sure.
They are side by side, Ostella and Crone. It looks a little bit like a Star Mazda race from a year ago because those guys were competitors in that series. Crone really has to lift. You could tell his car started to wash out on him a little bit. He knew Ostella was to his high side. He's back in the throttle now. They're going side by side. Mike and the leader's right behind him.
Yep, so here comes Joseph Newgarden. He's got a hand. We've got a yellow flag being displayed. The yellow light is on. You can see the tire smoke as we're looking. There's
that
a
looks
car
like
sitting.
Esteban Guerrieri.
It does.
It's the number 7 machine of Esteban Guerrieri has spun off of the courts at the midway point of the back straightaway.
Wow, that's unfortunate for Guerrieri. Wave the green flag. He does, Mark, and we're back to racing.
Joseph Newgarden gets a great jump at the start. Meanwhile, David Ostella is going to work on Gustavo Jacobin as they work their way into turn number 1. Esteban Guerrieri at the rear of the field. Looks like Wagner and Duarte Ferreira were side by side. Anders Crone got out of sorts a little bit. He runs side by side with Guerrieri. Now Ostella goes to the bottom side of the number 22 machine. He'll make that pass. Duarte Ferreira works his way around Victor Carbonnet. Off of turn number 3, we see Clausen and Rusty Mitchell going side by side with Goncalves running just behind them. Some great racing back at the pack as the number 11 machine of Joseph Newgarden starts to pull away off of turn 2.
Now, Mark, let's remember that, yes, Joseph Newgarden is a lap up on the field, but the battle now for Esteban Guerrieri is to pass as many cars as he can because he's working on David Ostella now. Ostella runs in 5th place. Guerrieri is now 6th. He has to try to get as many positions as he can.
Ostella tiptoes to the high side. His car's really developed a bad push toward the close of this race, and David Ostella had to lift plenty. Now Esteban Guerrieri starts to work on Carbone. Meanwhile, just in front of them, Duarte Ferreira is looking to pick up a spot on Jorge Goncalves. They have Rusty Mitchell with that Motorola sponsorship running just in front of them. Gustavo Jacobin now sees Brandon Clausen in his mirrors in that 77 machine. Clausen goes to the bottom side, looks to make the pass on Jacobin, shoves Gustavo up the banking just a little bit. Clausen makes the pass and sets sail down the back straightaway.
Yep, so Brian Clausen once again working on a 2-lap deficit here, as that was not a pass for position, but he is showing us that he's got a fast race car. And Mark, you know, at this point with 24 laps remaining, you probably want to say about a guy like Joseph Newgarden with a lap lead on the field, well, it's all but over. You and I both remember what happened here in 1996 to then a young guy named Tony Stewart who was driving for Team Menard. Mark, he had a 3-lap lead on the field but didn't win the race.
Fell right into the lap of Scott Sharp. He was in the right place at the right time, and I don't think I'd ever seen a driver more dejected and hotter than Tony Stewart was when that Menard power plant let go on him. And he had almost a 3-lap lead on the field, and the victory fell right into the lap of Scott Sharp.
And just as we say that, we have a lot of smoke from the rear of Anders Krone's car. And, Mark, that is going to bring out a yellow flag.
And Anders Crone had developed an issue since the restart because he was running in that 4th or 5th position most of the day, Mike, and then all of a sudden on the restart, it almost looked like he was dragging a parachute behind him. And he fell to the rear of the field, was having trouble keeping up with the number 22 machine, and then all of a sudden it's a rarity in both this series and also the IZOD IndyCar series, but certainly a mechanical failure brings Anders Krone's day to a disappointing close. Start 85 laps will be complete with just 15 to go. It's the Joseph Newgarden show. Will it continue? He has Clausen behind him, then Jacobin. Jorge Goncalves third, Ferreira, Guerrieri and company. Guerrieri, Mike, is going to salvage a pretty decent day when it looked like disaster was going to hit him hard.
Yeah, and once again, we've got the battle picking back up between Gustavo Jacobin, who Mark is dropping back. He has dropped not 1 but 2 positions. Goncalves gets by him, and now Duarte Ferreira tries to work underneath him in 4.
Whoa, we've got a car up against the wall. Did he touch it? Nope. Rusty Mitchell with a great piece of driving, Mike. He had that motor. No, that was David Ostella. Those cars pretty much identically stickered, and with the white signage on the side pod from a distance, they look identical. But David Ostella, again, a little bit of frustration for him, I'm sure, when this one was over. He was poised for perhaps a top 5 finish, but it all went away in turn 4. And we'd seen that car wiggle plenty to the high side in turns 2 and 4. But again, great piece of driving by Ostella just to hang on to it.
Here comes Duarte Ferreira once again. He and Gustavo Jacobin side by side. Mark racing into 1.
Nice race. And it looks like Ferreira, who takes the short way around the racetrack, is going to be able to hold on to the spot to the bottom. Meanwhile, the number 7 machine of Esteban Guerrieri continues to fall off the pace a little bit. And Mike, there's no question that Esteban Guerrieri may have seen the tires go away a bit after that spin down the back straightaway.
Yeah, I think you're right, and certainly not a good restart for Gustavo Jacquemin as he restarted second. Mark, he is now running fourth, and he could see Ostella trying to track him down here very, very quickly. But Jorge Goncalves has moved to second, and Mark, he's looking for his best finish of the season.
Yeah, his best finish other than this was a third-place finish at Milwaukee, and he finished fourth at Barber. He's been very steady. And going back to the conversation Nick Yeoman had a moment ago with Anders Krohn, I know the results don't always bear it out, and again, he points the finger at some bad luck, and that does happen. But, Mike, you've been around Anders plenty throughout the course of the season, as have I. Don't know what it is, but every now and then a guy comes along, and regardless of the results during the season, you get around a guy and you get this intangible, this air, this feel, and I really think that Anders Krohn could be around this series for a while, maybe get another year on the lights and then be ready to move up to the Eyes on IndyCar series.
Totally agree with you. He just fits. I don't know why, and you're right. It's just an intangible. You're around a guy you feel like that he is going to be around for a while, is going to make the step up to the next level, is going to be one of those guys that is going to be a very competent competitor. You get the same feel about a guy like Stefan Wilson, and certainly you get the same feel from a guy like Brian Clausen and Joseph Newgarden. That These are guys that are ready to make the move up to the next level, and certainly they're in the right place at the right time.
Lap 91 complete now. Newgarden, Goncalves, Duarte Ferreira, Gustavo Jacquemin is fourth, Guerrieri is fifth, then Ostella, Clausen, Mitchell, and Wagner. Carbone is 10th. Anders Krohn out of the race with a mechanical failure, and Stefan Wilson parked it after 11 laps. The 12 cars competing here today. Again, want to remind you, 3 p.m. Eastern will take the air on the IMS radio network. But, Mike, again, the green flag start time has been moved up for the Eyes on IndyCar race this afternoon.
Yeah, we were looking at a start time just before 4 o'clock Eastern time. That has now been moved to 3:31. ABC will go on the air mark at 3:30, and the green flag will fall 1 minute after TV network airtime. We will go on the air at the top of the hour at 3 o'clock Eastern time.
And, Mike, as the laps start to draw to a close, we would be remiss, those of us who are Indiana natives and those of us who live throughout the great state of Indiana, we are approaching this day with a heavy heart because one of the landmark events is the Great Indiana State Fair. It's one of the oldest and one of the best. And, folks, in case you didn't know, just prior to the Country Act Sugarland taking the stage last night, there was a collapse of the staging area at the Indiana State Fair. Tragically, lost lives, at least 5 at last report, with scores of others injured. The Indiana State Fair has been shut down for the day, will not reopen until it is announced that it's reopening. But, Mike, certainly our thoughts and prayers are with our friends and neighbors and family members in the state of Indiana today.
Mark, my wife, Nicole, and I were at the Indiana State Fair all day on Wednesday with our daughters, and, you know, it's frightening to see the video, and certainly the loss of life is just terrible. Mark, you and I both know how much worse it could have been. So even in the horrific circumstance of a fatal incident, we do know that in many respects there are a lot of lucky people who got out of there with their lives quite literally last night. But we certainly do mourn for those who lost their loved ones and their friends, and just hope and pray that they will find some peace. It's one of those senseless tragedies, Mark, that the weather had a lot to do with, and it was very, very sad indeed.
And we certainly want to do everything we can to boost the spirits of our affiliate relations director, John Royer, a longtime member of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway radio network. John, for a long time, has been involved with concerts and events at the Indiana State Fair, and we know that this is a difficult day for John, and he approaches this day with a heavy heart. And John, I know you lost some friends and had some friends hurt, and John, our thoughts and prayers are with you. Mike, back to the matter at hand. We still have to move on, continue to provide a show for the fans back home, and hopefully pick their spirits up a little bit. Lap 98 just about to be complete, and what a magical day it's been for Joseph Newgarden.
And Mark, he just laid down, I think, the fastest lap of the race at 144 plus miles an hour. Joseph Newgarden now with 98 laps complete. He's just about a lap and a half away from his 5th win of 2011.
And Mike, all he has done throughout the course of this season, as we mentioned, he has led 212 laps. That will go up to 312 after this event today.
That's impressive. And Sam Schmidt Motorsports, once again, tightening that grip mark as the white flag comes out on perhaps yet another championship.
And folks, just so you'll know, if you're not familiar with Joseph and you see that first name, Joseph, he's a Tennessee boy.
That is right, Hendersonville, Tennessee, but his mother is Norwegian. And Scandinavian by birth and as far as her heritage, and she decided to go with that spelling for his name.
The only thing he might have to say after today is what took us so long to get back to New Hampshire. Joseph Newgarden dives to the bottom side, twin checkers are out, and he wins at New Hampshire. He's the champion of the New Hampshire 100, leading Wall 100 laps.
Wow.
A dominating performance today by the number 11 machine of Joseph Newgarden.